Razors are barely 100 years old in their modern disposable form, sitting in your bathroom right now. Men have grown facial hair for millions of years. So what did they actually do about it? The answer involves seashells, volcanic glass, and one method that could genuinely take your skin off. Let's start nearly 100,000 years ago, long before metal tools existed anywhere on Earth. Archaeologists have found sharpened flint and obsidian flakes alongside human remains dating back this far. Obsidian is volcanic glass, and when broken correctly, it creates an edge sharper than modern surgical steel. Early humans discovered that pressing this edge against skin could actually shave hair close to the surface. This wasn't comfortable. It wasn't safe either. But it worked, and that's genuinely all that mattered. Some researchers believe early shaving wasn't about appearance at all. It was about survival and practicality first. Facial hair could freeze in cold climates, trapping ice directly against skin, causing frostbite more easily. It could also be grabbed during hand-to-hand combat, giving an opponent a dangerous advantage. Removing it wasn't vanity. It was a tactical decision, tied directly to survival in a dangerous world. Now travel forward to ancient Egypt, a civilization already known for taking personal grooming extremely seriously. Egyptians developed actual copper razors, some dating back over 5,000 years, found preserved in tombs. These weren't crude tools either. They were carefully crafted, with curved blades designed specifically for shaving. Egyptian priests were required to shave their entire bodies, including their heads, for religious cleanliness reasons. Facial hair was associated with being uncivilized or lower class throughout most of Egyptian society at the time. Pharaohs themselves were almost always depicted clean-shaven, reinforcing shaving as a symbol of power and status. Interestingly, false beards made from woven hair or metal were sometimes worn for ceremonial purposes only. This tells us something important. Shaving wasn't just practical for Egyptians, it carried real social and religious weight. Now move to ancient Mesopotamia, where razors made from bronze started appearing around 4,000 years ago. Mesopotamian men used these bronze razors regularly, often alongside pumice stones to smooth skin after shaving. Barbers actually existed as a recognized profession during this era, one of the earliest documented examples anywhere. This detail matters more than it seems at first. Shaving had become skilled enough to require training. It wasn't something every man simply did himself, using whatever sharp object happened to be nearby. Now let's look at ancient Greece, where facial hair actually swung back the other direction completely. Unlike Egypt, Greek men initially valued beards, heavily associating them with wisdom, masculinity, and philosophical seriousness. Philosophers were almost always depicted with long, full beards, seen as a visual symbol of intelligence itself. But everything changed dramatically under Alexander the Great, around 300 to 30 BC, for one very specific military reason. Alexander reportedly ordered his soldiers to shave completely, worried that enemies could grab beards during close combat. This wasn't a fashion choice. It was direct military strategy, prioritizing survival over tradition or personal preference. After Alexander's influence spread, shaving became far more common and socially accepted across much of the Greek world. The Romans took this shift even further, turning shaving into a genuine mark of Roman civilization itself. Being clean-shaven separated Romans, in their own view, from what they considered uncivilized, bearded outsiders. Roman barbershops, called tonstrini, became major social hubs, similar to how bathhouses functioned within daily Roman life. Men would gather there regularly, not just to shave, but to socialize, gossip, and discuss politics openly. Roman razors were made from iron, sharper and more durable than earlier bronze versions used before them. But shaving still came with real risk attached. Cuts, infections, and even scarring were extremely common outcomes. Some wealthy Romans avoided public barbers entirely, keeping personal slaves specifically trained and dedicated to shaving safely. Now here's where the story takes a genuinely unexpected turn, moving toward the Americas, entirely separately. Native American tribes, completely isolated from European or Asian shaving traditions, developed their own separate methods entirely. Some tribes used sharpened clamshells, essentially acting as tweezers to pluck facial hair strand by strand. This method was slow and genuinely painful, but it was also remarkably effective at fully removing hair. Other tribes used heated stones pressed directly against skin to singe hair away instead of cutting it. This detail is important because it proves something significant about human problem-solving across completely separate civilizations. Different continents, zero contact with each other whatsoever, still arrived at strikingly similar solutions to the exact same problem. Now let's move to ancient China, where shaving carried entirely different, deeply symbolic cultural meaning altogether. For much of Chinese history, facial hair, and hair in general, was tied directly to filial piety. Hair was considered a gift from one's parents, and cutting it was sometimes seen as deeply disrespectful. This meant shaving wasn't always common or accepted throughout Chinese history, unlike in Egypt, Greece, or Rome. However, this changed dramatically depending on the specific dynasty and cultural period being discussed throughout Chinese history. Bronze razors did exist in ancient China, primarily used by soldiers, or for specific religious and ceremonial purposes. Now let's return briefly to medieval Europe, where shaving safety actually declined for a significant period. Unlike Rome's relatively refined barbershops, medieval shaving tools were often crude, poorly maintained, and genuinely dangerous to use. Barbers during this era didn't just cut hair, they also performed minor surgery and even dental work. This is actually where the modern barber pole symbol originates, red representing blood, white representing bandages used. Shaving cuts could easily become infected, with no antibiotics available anywhere, sometimes leading to serious illness or death. Despite this danger, shaving remained fairly common, especially among clergy members, who were required to shave completely. So by now, a clear pattern should be emerging across every single civilization we've covered so far. Every culture developed its own specific tools, obsidian, copper, bronze, iron, and shells, based on locally available materials. But the underlying motivations kept repeating constantly: practicality, survival, religious symbolism, and social status, again and again. Shaving was never purely about appearance alone. It was tied directly to identity, safety, and where you belonged. Now let's fast forward to when modern shaving technology, as we actually recognize it today, finally emerged. The first mass-produced safety razor was introduced by King Camp Gillette in 1901, changing shaving completely. Before this invention, straight razors required regular sharpening, skill, and genuine risk every single time they were used. Gillette's disposable blade design made shaving dramatically safer, faster, and accessible to nearly everyone, almost overnight. Electric razors followed decades later, removing blades from the process entirely, reducing cutting risk even further still. That means truly safe, accessible shaving is barely over 100 years old at this exact point. For nearly all of human history before that, men relied entirely on the dangerous methods we just covered. So here's the real question this entire story actually raises. Once you step back and consider it fully, were ancient men simply enduring pain and risk because they had no better options available to them? Or did shaving actually mean something deeper, tied to identity, status, and survival, far beyond simple appearance? Every civilization we covered kept returning to the same core truth. Facial hair carried real, tangible meaning. Removing it wasn't casual. It was deliberate, often dangerous, and deeply connected to how a man was perceived. This is honestly the part most people overlook completely when thinking about ancient grooming habits in general. We assume shaving is a purely modern convenience, something invented recently, for purely cosmetic, surface-level reasons. But ancient men were solving real problems: survival, status, hygiene, and identity, using nothing but available materials. If a method didn't work, or caused too much damage, it disappeared, replaced by something safer eventually. Obsidian gave way to copper. Copper gave way to bronze, then iron, then eventually modern steel blades. Each shift represented real, hard-earned progress, built directly on centuries of trial, error, and necessity combined. So the next time you shave, using a razor that barely takes you 2 or 3 minutes, Remember, that exact same task once required volcanic glass, sharpened shells, or dangerously unrefined iron blades instead. Different tools, different eras, completely different levels of risk, all solving the exact same basic human problem. And that raises a bigger question about everything else we assume must be simple, modern, and unremarkable. If ancient men risked injury, and even infection, just to remove facial hair, what did that reveal? It reveals that even the smallest daily habits carry centuries of forgotten history, struggle, and quiet innovation behind them. That's exactly what this channel keeps uncovering, one forgotten piece of ancient human life at a time. If this changed how you see something as simple as shaving, there's likely more you're overlooking, too. Subscribe to Human Civilization because the past still has more forgotten answers, waiting to be uncovered next.